the Painted Hills, which is just a beautiful little corner of Oregon here and super interesting. You need to be careful about mud on any dirt roads out that way, because if it's kind of a red clayish soil, that stuff just turns to grease when it's wet. So if it's wet and muddy, just approach it cautiously before you dive in.
Moxie, Greg, and I are riding around the world to raise $100,000 for the nonprofit Girl Up. We're donating 10% of RUFFLY sales to the fundraiser and posting a new episode every week. It's a big dog on two wheels adventure for girls' empowerment. So follow along and please lend your support. You see this mud? This is what we slid in. So there's this nice little path right here that looked like a lot of the cars had been going through. And so that's the path that I took. And I guess somehow I got off of it and like just slid in this like really sticky, wet, like mud. And like did a whoosh, 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 and then went down on the low side. And Greg was behind me and he must have been watching. And he also went down. He actually went down harder than I did and ended up hurting his windscreen. A piece came off of it. Moxie, she's fine. She was all excited when we got down. She just wanted to play. And we had a number of cars stop and ask us if everything was okay. And we were like, yes, it was fine. And Moxie wanted to like run up to them and play with them as well. So she's fine. Moxie keeps trying to get back up onto the bike. She wanted to lay down in the sun, but she wanted to lay down in the sun in the middle of the road. So I called her over, and then she comes right to the bike like, okay, are we gonna just go again? She's such a good one.
Just a quick time out to tell you how you can support the GoRUFFLY Around the World adventure for Girl Up. You can donate directly to Girl Up at goruffly.com/world-adventure. You can make a purchase at goruffly.com where 10% goes towards the fundraiser. Tell all your friends and family about it. And of course, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much. Now back to the adventure.
So there are a few things that need to be done on the bikes before we can move forward. First thing is my case plopped off, which was fine. The zip ties broke, so Greg is just re-zip tying it. And then for him, his windscreen broke a little bit on the side. Not much we can do about that here. Then his turn signal in the front got damaged. So that's just going to need to be propped up for now. And the funny thing is when I went down, all of a sudden I saw water on the side, like coming out of the bike. And I was like, oh shit, did I break a seal or did I puncture something like in the fuel tank? No. Do you know what it was? It was my hydro flask, my Moxie's water bottle that I carry in the front pannier pocket, and that's what punctured. It was causing a leak. So nothing too major there either. My bike looks a little dirty as well, but it's gonna be okay. My front auxiliary light bent, but it didn't bend the bracket, just sort of bent up the light itself, so that can be put back into place. And the carrier was perfectly fine, didn't even hit. And for Greg, he's gonna have to bash out his cases again. But it looks like the handlebars are good, even though we hit pretty hard. We weren't going that fast, but we did hit hard. And I guess that's just the way that it goes. And Greg was getting a little upset with me because so when these things happen, I get really excited. Like it's fun, like there's like something different. And the fact that we were perfectly okay, like we were fine. And the bikes are still really rideable. It just sort of makes me a little bit giddy. And Greg gets really like quiet and he gets a lot more worked up and he thinks about all of the repairs that are gonna have to be made and the costs for it all. So we just looked at it a little bit differently. And Moxie, she just wants to play. So that's our situation here. We're like 2 miles outside of Painted Hills. I guess the idea will be is we'll try and go towards Painted Hills to see it. But if we do come across another one of these mud things, we are going to walk the bikes the way we will do when we come back out of here.
Jessica has never found a bench along the hiking trail that she did not want to test out. She is good for certifying the structural integrity and the comfort of benches along hiking trails. I personally am not convinced that it can be considered a hiking trail if it has a bench along it, but that might just be closed-mindedness on my part. The morning did not go as planned with a double crash, but we got through it and no real worse for the wear. And now we have visited Painted Hills, really beautiful, and it looks painted, so check. The name jibes with the appearance. And now we're sort of following a series of country roads slash highways. I guess they'd be like secondary or tertiary highways. Just beautiful through these canyons.
Greg, it's not so nice when you film when I'm eating.
It's gotta be a mix of things.
Yeah, but it's always when I'm eating.
Well, maybe you should consider that you're always eating. We are now in a town called Kimberly, which, as far as we can see, is one abandoned house structure, and a general store. And that's pretty much all that we've seen so far here. Maybe there's more tucked away, but it's not presenting itself to us openly. So maybe there is a community around Kimberly.
These dried apples are from the orchard down the street, so we're gonna give them a try.
It's been sharply cold. It gets a little bit warmer as if to tease, but then it just gets cold again. And it's not that the temperature itself is so brutally cold, but there's a good strong wind, and it's like a sharp wind, right? It's got like needle points. So it just strikes you hard. It's always a crosswind, no matter what direction you're going. It's always hitting you from the side, and it's like finding a spot, like your jugular. It just gets under a thing and around a thing and over it, and then it gets you with its needle points. So that's the type of riding that today's been. And yet, it is so gorgeous. It is so beautiful here. So we're gonna continue this as long as the day will allow us, meandering our way on these country highways towards Baker City, where we will spend a few days working, because gotta fuel the journey, gotta fuel the fuel, and that is by working. So that's what we'll do. And in the meantime, we're gonna try to enjoy as much of this as we can, and also sort of stay bundled up from the cold.
So we start on this road, and it's 26 miles to get to the main highway. And for the first mile, everything was great, looked fantastic. We saw a deer, and now it turned to dirt. It's really not that bad, but it is going through the mountains, so there are ups and downs and some switchbacks. So it's been a long day. I'm practicing my off-road skills. It is 6 degrees. It is absolutely freezing. We have like 16 or 17 miles left to reach the main road, and then from there it's still another hour or so to the Airbnb.
Long day, cold day, eventful day, you might say. Double crash. And some decent off-road, nice fire road through the national forest. So that's hard to beat. We were a little bit on edge just because of the morning's mud. And so kind of we were expecting mud everywhere, like zombies coming out of the woods or something. But no problems, it was all smooth sailing. Lots of deer and elk. So as we're getting north, we're realizing that you really have to be more and more cautious about checking the woods, because they are just bolting out. But we have reached our Airbnb in Baker City. So thus begins 3 work days at this cute little Airbnb called the Jewel Box. It's just a beautiful rhythm of sort of those 4 days on and whatever's thrown at you. And then you know that you've got that landing time to kind of regroup, air out, and dry your gear and prep yourself for the next stretch of adventure.
They
had fresh fudge from here, so I got a creme brulee fudge and a mocha hazelnut. The hazelnut's on the top, mocha's on the bottom. So I got a bit of chocolatey stuff and a bit more like vanilla creme brulee. I did tasting in there. Their stuff is so good. And so I just got a cute little small sizes for us so that we can chomp on it tonight.
What do you think? Do you think it's true? I do think it's true. But I think it's sort of like how, you know, you follow a river and there's parts where it flows really fast and there's even rapids and everything. And then there's other parts where it pools up and even kind of churns back on itself. So even though it is overall moving forward, I think there are definitely moments where it doesn't feel like it. Major crisis right now. So Jessica stopped at the Safeway yesterday and got us some feed and some drink for the next few days of work and for our next several days on the road. And among the things she got was some coffee, some really what seems to be great local coffee, nice dark espresso roast. So really looking forward to it. The problem is it's not ground. Our Airbnb does not have a grinder. I stopped at Safeway. Turns out they don't have a grinder. And the Starbucks in the Safeway refused me a grind. Corporate, apparently, does not allow anything in their grinders that is not Starbucks coffee. So that kind of makes me like Starbucks a little less. So I'm going over to a local coffee place now, and we're gonna see if they will oblige me with a grind. And maybe the crisis can be averted. But it's got me anxious, I won't lie. Okay, emergency has been averted because the nice people at Coffee Corral here in Baker City have obliged me with a grind. And it's terribly blasphemous because it is not their brand. They are roasters, and so it can't feel good to them, but they were super cool. They're doing me a grind right now. That's me, that's my grind. And we're gonna get through this and we will live to coffee and espresso another day. Sometimes beautiful and inspiring things can be found in the most unexpected or unlikely places. In this case, behind the toilet in the bathroom of our Airbnb in Baker City. This is Jessica's treat pocket. So storing my last beer in there is not what it's intended for, and yet I'm doing it anyway. We are in the town of Sumpter, and it is just drizzling on us a bit, which is unpleasant. And Sumpter is apparently known for dredges. They have a railroad that comes through here and a river, and I guess they dredge the river. I could be so wrong about this. I could be so thoroughly wrong. I really don't have a clue what I'm talking about. This is an area of sort of general knowledge that I have generally no knowledge about. So that's why we've come, to educate ourselves. And so hopefully in a moment, at least as far as you're watching, I will be able to say something intelligent about this. Okay, so we have been educated about the dredge, courtesy of the placard. Basically, the dredge created its own pond as it went panning for gold. So like these buckets would like scoop up the dirt in front, they'd search it and sort it for gold, they'd send the debris out the back, and that whole process of sort of like dredging things up was creating sort of a pond that would move with the dredge. So it was like always floating in like several feet of water. And they just kind of gobble up the earth, spit it out the back, and it would create like allow the water to just kind of move with it, and so the thing would keep floating. So kind of marvel of engineering and also of earth destruction this rusty old contraption is.
They had to heat the water because when it was cold out, you could cut up the trees.
Yum, 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 yum. Jess, I hope the inside of your motorcycle engine is looking a little bit better shape than these things. Through piles of rubble that the dredge has just, I guess, churned up and tossed out. So basically we're taking a pleasure walk through the discards and detritus of gold mining in the 1800s. Jessica, are you winterized there? What is the current outside temperature? By which I mean the temperature outside of your environmental suit there. You seem to be prepared for snowstorm blast conditions. Jessica, you basically have like hoods stacked upon hoods there. How many hoods do you have? It's a lot of hood action.
Just 2.
Do you think that really you should only have one garment with a hood being worn at a time? It's like a layer cake of hoods.
I know, and I feel so frumpy. Like, look how big these things are. And then they pull up. And then even this, and then with having this sweater and tank top and whatever, like I'm like all smooshed in, and everything is so wide, and I got my chocolate almonds in my pocket so that I can snack as we go. Just a schlump.
I know, what a schlumpy. Nobody's gonna invite you to the dance. So just after we got to the historic dredge site here in Sumpter, Oregon, a whole group here of riders pulled up, and they're clearly on a nice big tour. And it turns out that one of the riders just bought a cockpit.
Okay, so how random. We ran into one of our customers, our new customers, 4-day ago customer, Donna, who actually just bought a cockpit for her standard poodle, whose name is? Bentley. So she got a chance to see how Moxie lays in her cockpit, so she's gonna have an idea about how Bentley's gonna do in his.
And this is in the giant metropolis of Sumpter, Oregon. So yeah, really, what are the odds?
Right.
Randomly, they showed up here, and what a cool thing to be able to run into a brand new cockpit rider, which is a treat for us, because for us it's always remote, right? By email, video instructions, sometimes a video call or telephone call, but it's all remote, right? Most of the time we're in Guatemala or on the road, and so to actually get to engage with a customer and talk to them about their bike and their cockpit and their dog and riding together, what a treat.
From Sumpter, we continued on into the national forest, which is called
That one to be
Walla Walla something.
future editor Greg will figure that one out.
But we've been traveling through the national forest, and then it sort of comes out of national forest land, and then maybe it's BLM land. It's sort of hard to tell. We haven't figured out what the legend on Google Maps really means. But it's the darker green and then the light green, and then there was some beige sections. And right now, I believe we are still in the national forest, but just a little bit ahead, we get out of it. So we assume that we're allowed to camp here.
Yes, I did lug this whole way from Baker City, but it is all paying off right now, even though it's cold and it's cold out, but I am enjoying it. So worth it. Worth it.
The stretch that we did right now was a lot of gravel. It's probably been the deepest gravel we've had in a while in certain spots. And it was a bit anxiety provoking, just because of like sort of getting into the deeper parts. You get a bit of a skid, but I kept it together. I looked forward, I gave power, and I was able to get through it. Unfortunately, I didn't really get up high in my gear. They stayed really pretty slow to get through it. But I think that it was a good practice being on gravel, especially because of the roads that we're going to be doing as we get further north. So it was good practice, and I think that after today's 2 hours of gravel roads, tomorrow's will be a lot easier.
Tomorrow's roads will be easier until or unless it starts to rain, because as soon as it starts to piss, all bets are off. But so far so good. Let's keep our fingers and paws crossed that does not happen.
Hi guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed the episode. So that was a nasty crash, but we were all okay.
And in last week's episode where we showed a bit of the crash, we had a lot of outpouring of support from people who were glad to see that Moxie and that Greg and I were okay. And we're just really appreciative for all that support. But there are a few things that I could have done differently to prevent this type of crash. The first one is I should have been standing. I went to the rawhide class, I did the dart class. I know that when there's a tough section, you should stand. I think what got to me was that we were riding on pavement. Everything was dry and fine, and this was sort of the first piece of dirt or mud that we came across that day. So for me, I was like, well, the cars had been driving through. I could see a track, so it should be fine. But I really should have thought about Harold's advice about the mud and how it can be sticky. So that was number one, should have been standing. Number two, even though I wasn't standing and I was sitting riding through it, I should have been looking straight out ahead at the horizon. What did I do? I started looking down. If you watch the video closely, you'll see that as I was riding and I got a little bit unsure and I felt it sort of slide, I looked straight down. And I think it's just that coping mechanism of wanting to sort of see where you're riding, making sure that I was riding through those tire tracks and that I wasn't getting into the dirt and the mud that I was seeing on the sides. So if I had just looked straight up ahead, then I would have been able to sort of go through it and feel more comfortable that I wasn't just like looking at every mud patch on the side and getting more and more anxious. The third thing that I probably should have done, I should have probably walked it. I know, like I said, like we just sort of came upon it, but there was nothing stopping me from pulling off to the side and checking it out, just stepping through it, seeing what a good track would be. It's something that I do when we are normally riding dirt and there's, for example, if there is like a water puddle and you can't see the bottom, it's something that I'll walk through first just to make sure that the ground is solid and that there is a way to pass. That's exactly how Greg broke his leg a number of years ago when we were in New Orleans. He did not walk a big muddy patch before riding through it, and he ended up hitting tire tracks from, I think they were trucks that were driving through, and they left that big groove. His foot hit the side of that, and it broke his leg. So that's why he now has a plate in his leg with screws. So if he had just walked it, he would have been able to easily see that there was that groove. So again, yes, I should have probably walked it. And I think the big thing that I'm taking away from this about this type of mud is because it was the morning, the sun was able to dry sort of that first layer of mud, but it was still wet under it and it was deep. So it gave you that illusion that it was dry, that it wasn't that muddy. Like if you look at the footage, it doesn't look that muddy. It just sort of, it looks a little bit damp. But the truth is that under that layer of dried mud was like wet gunk. And that's what ended up catching my tire, and that's why we went down. So I think those are the key things that I could have done to prevent this crash. And it's funny because since that crash, you'll see I'm standing a lot more, especially through difficult sections, even if it's been tarmac and then there's a little gravel section because we're in a park, a national park, or if there's construction, I am standing a lot more, and I'm feeling a lot more confident about it. So this was just a good reminder, not a good reminder, I wish we hadn't gone down, but it was a reminder that I do need to stand through these sections and look straight ahead. The thing that I would say about Greg is obviously we have this video, it was recorded because Greg was following behind me, and the truth is he was following too closely behind me. We were talking to each other on our cardos, on the communicators, and so we could tell we were talking about the dirt, and he was just sort of saying, well, you see that line, go through that line. I'm like, yeah, I see that, I'm gonna ride through. And he was just behind me thinking it was just going to be easy peasy, we were going to get through. So he came up a bit closer than he should have. And when he saw me starting to swivel, all he told me later, all he was thinking was, I can't hit her, I need to just go a different direction. So he sort of pulled off to the right side where it got even worse and more muddy, and that's why he went down. So if he hadn't been following so closely, he would have waited till I got through it and then entered it. And if I did have a crash, then he would have been able to see that and not do what I did. So that's another another example of what we've learned from this experience. But crashes happen when you ride the types of riding that we do. It happens, and I did get a lot of feedback from people from last week's video, just asking about the safety component, and like I said in my last video, it's really about having, for Moxie's safety, it's about having a safe motorcycle dog carrier that's padded, where the dog is harnessed in. Like Moxie didn't even touch the ground, she was just harnessed in, and you saw in this video, like, she was just excited when she got off. She wanted to play, she wanted to jump. You see her at one point like running towards Greg, and that was right after the crash, after I unclipped her. And so it's not like she holds it against us or if she's traumatized or anything like that. And for the dozens of crashes that I've now had with her, it's been the same situation over and over. And she's just ready to get back on. But it's important that the carrier that your dog rides in is one that is going to be safe for your dog and safe for you too. I imagine a situation where I rode that and Moxie was potentially sitting up or had the ability to move around more. If I started wavering, she would definitely start moving around. And it's something that you'll see in some of my other videos. When I get anxious on the off-road, Moxie will start fidgeting, making it even more difficult for me. So I just sort of picture that. If I was riding through that mud and Moxie started to fidget, it could have gotten a lot worse. And it's just dangerous for both of us. So making sure that your carrier is safe and padded and that they're secured into the cockpit is really the key. Now I want to mention one other thing, because I feel like some of these videos defame me a little bit. Because most of the footage that Greg gets from me when we're at a stop place is I'm eating. And it makes it look like all I do is when we stop is all I do is eat. But the truth is, I can get hangry. So I do have to eat. I need to have a snack when we stop. My blood sugar can sort of crash pretty quickly, and then I become a bit of a pain to everybody. And it's something that I know about myself, which is why Greg has a treat pocket for me on his bike where we carry treats for me, and I've got a bunch in my tank bag as well. And it just makes the when we stop, it's a great time to have a snack so that I don't get my blood sugar too low, and then I don't become a terror. So if you see me eating on these, Greg's normally like videoing and I'm there just gobble, gobble, gobble. It's because of that. So I've learned myself, I know what I need, and making sure that I have food available when we stop really is key. And so if you're somebody like me who has that issue, make sure that you carry treats with you. I carry like granola bars. Sometimes we're carrying beef jerky when we're mostitarians. Or some cookies, or just something that's quick to eat, that doesn't take time to prepare, so that you can just have sort of that snack that you need when you need it. I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube and at GoRUFFLY for Facebook and Instagram. Talk to you soon.